Show you how to do number 94. Maybe you figured it out by now. Maybe you haven't. But this can be a little bit tricky, and it's going to use solving a systems of equations. So the general idea is that we have 2 points, and we know that it's an exponential function on number 94. So like what we really have here is xy. And we know we have an input of 2 and an output of 144, an input of 6 and 729. Because these are not sequential, there's 3 terms in between them. You could just sort of trial and error it, but we have a better system algebraically. So I'm going to demonstrate that. But first of all, going through this on A, what is the general form for an exponential function that has an asymptote of y equals 0? So this is our a b to the x power. So now we have a system of equations, and so we can plug in the x and y that we know for each system. So our first equation, we know y, 144 equals a b to the second power. And then our other equation, 729 is our output, a b to the input of 6. So now we're going to use the equal values method here. And so what's the easiest variable that, so what's the easiest variable we can solve for in each equation? Obviously it's a. So if we divide both sides by b squared, one equation we're going to have a equals 144 over, we're dividing the first equation by b squared. So there's our first equation. Our second equation, we have a equals 729 over b to the 6th. Okay, so remember the equal values method. When you have 2 things equal to each other, or 2 equations where you have the same variable isolated, you can set them equal to each other, so the things in the circle must always be equal to each other, or also be equal to each other. So write that out as an equation, 144 over b squared equals 729 over b to the 6th. You can use your cross multiplication, the butterfly method. So 144b to the 6th equals 729b squared. I'm going to divide both sides by b squared. And so we're going to have 144 b6 over b squared. Remember, we subtract exponents, so we're going to have b to the 4th equals 729. Divide by 144. And we're going to get b to the 4th equals, now I'm going to go off on the side and use my calculator. You can use your own to verify, but 729 divided by 144 equals 5.0625, which looks like a weird number. Okay, and now if b to the 4th equals 5.0625, you can take the 4th root. So what times itself 4 times equals 5.0625. There's a button on your calculator for that. And if you have like an iPhone or something, you turn it sideways, you get your scientific calculator, and there's a little button that's like a square root symbol, but instead of a square or a cube root, you have a y, and you just push that, and then what root you want, and we put in 4. And it all turns out that that messy number turns into 1.5. So that means 1.5 to the 4th power would have been 5.0625. In other words, going back up here, the ratio to get from 144 to 129, you would have multiplied itself by, the 144 by 1.5, and you do that 4 times to get to the 6th. So all of this, we can go back, and for the equation, we can plug it back in and say y equals a times 1.5 to the x power. And now if we want to find a, we can plug in a value of x and y. So we know 144 equals a times 1.5 squared. 144 equals 1.5 squared is 2.25. 2.25, dividing both sides by 2.25, 144 divided by 2.25. You can put that in your calculator and find out that a is equal to 64. So that's what you would have gotten if you went back to your table and divided by 1.5 to get back to your starting value of 0. So there's our y-intercept. So you put it all together and you get 64 times 1.5 to the x power. And that was a lot, but that got us to our final equation using algebra instead of trial and error.